Okay, the adrenal glands. Um, I don't know about you, but I don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about the adrenal glands. They just ride around on my kidneys and do their thing, but I don't give much thought to them during the day, but they are extremely important. And you can see this is how they're positioned, one on top of each kidney, hence the term adrenal, above the renals. There are two functions, basically, of the adrenal glands. One is to kind of affect our fight or flight response by producing epinephrine and norepinephrine, and then and that takes place in what's known as the adrenal medulla, the center of the adrenal glands. And the adrenal cortex produces various hormones and steroids. And I always, this is kind of goofy, but most of my lectures were before lunch, and the adrenal glands in this picture always kind of remind me of those Ferrero Rocher candies, where you have the chocolatey inside and then the crunchy hazelnut outside. And so that's what I think of whenever I see this picture. So the medulla is the soft, creamy chocolate inside, while the adrenal cortex resembles the hazelnut crunchy outside. So I know that is goofy, but that's what I always think of when I see this picture. So anyway, back to the not so ridiculous. The adrenal glands, this explains a little bit further. They produce glucocorticoids, mineralocorticoids, and a small amount of sex hormones. When we talk about, when you hear the term corticosteroids, that's where it comes from, is the adrenal cortex. So there are two types of corticosteroids, or steroids produced by the adrenal gland, adrenal cortex, and they are glucocorticoids, which are what we think of as just regular steroids like hydrocortisone, and then mineralocorticoids, which help in regulating our body and salt, or the body's water and salt levels. So the main mineralocorticoid is aldosterone, and then hydrocortisone and cortisone are the main corticosteroids, or glucocorticoids. I know it's confusing. Cortisone and hydrocortisone have a lot of anti-inflammatory action. They work on the immune system, keep it under control, and then they regulate how our body uses the nutrients such as carbs, fats, and proteins. The adrenal medulla, of course, the chocolatey inside, produces epinephrine and norepinephrine, and so that helps us in the event that we need to fight or flee. They're going to, do all those effects that we talked about when we talked about Ned, the saber-toothed tiger, coming after you. The sex hormones that are produced are estrogen, progesterone, and then testosterone, and we'll look at those a little bit later. So on page 297 in the book, we talk about what happens when there is a hypofunction, not enough adrenal gland production. That is known as Addison's disease. And when this happens, the adrenal gland produces only a little of the cortisol that's needed, or maybe none at all, and it doesn't produce sufficient aldosterone to help control the salt and water balance. This can be caused by an autoimmune condition in which the immune system has turned on the adrenal glands. It can be caused by having the adrenal glands removed, having radiation to the adrenal glands or to that general area, and then anything that goes wrong with the pituitary gland, where it is not functioning properly to stimulate the adrenal glands. Signs and symptoms of Addison's disease are low blood sugar, salt wasting, where there's just no fluid, because of imbalance of salt in the body, low blood sugar, weakness, and high potassium in the blood. Eventually you can die from this. Of course, you probably have heard the most famous Addison's disease sufferer was President John F. Kennedy, who was kind of an unhealthy child and grew up to have a lot of physical problems, and one of them was Addison's disease. And of course, he died in 1963, and so we didn't have the best treatment back then like they do now. Now the treatment is to replace the cortisol the body's not making with synthetic glucocorticoids, and then also a medication called fludrocortisone or Florinef that will replace the aldosterone. So you have to be on that for the rest of your life, but that will make Addison's disease easier to control. It won't cure it, but it will replace the hormones that you are missing. This is a picture of what you're going to see when you have Addison's disease, so take a look at that. We've got autoimmune Addison's. Tuberculosis has been known to cause the adrenal glands to shut down, and iron overload, which is very interesting. Lots of bad things happen if you have too much iron, and that's one of them. So make sure you look at this cartoon. When you are taking cortisol and Florinef, your patient needs to have frequent medical monitoring. They should not smoke or use alcohol because you're replacing the cortisol. It's very irritating to the stomach. Any kind of a corticosteroid is irritating to the stomach lining, so you can get ulcers. Because you're taking the steroid, the immune system function can be affected, so you are at increased risk for infection. These folks are immune compromised. In times of stress, when there is a lot of adrenaline and noradrenaline being produced, you might have to increase your doses. Know the signs and symptoms of adrenal insufficiency. Tell them to your patient. Tell them that they cannot stop the drug abruptly. That's so important when you're taking any kind of a steroid. That is always true. They should wear a medical alert bracelet in case they become unconscious and can't tell the doctor that they are taking steroids. Immune system or immunization considerations have to be followed. You many times will get the injection, but you're not going to benefit from it because the immune system is suppressed, and there's a slight risk of getting the illness from a live weakened virus. Very, very rare, but in an immune compromised person it can happen. You have to watch your diet, you have to watch how you store the drug, know what medications the patient's taking that the drugs interact with, and tell them about their dosage schedule, how they have to take these medications.